Well, hello, my first grade friends. I hope everybody is enjoying this reading of my big fat zombie Goldfish. This is the final push. This is the last day of our last full week of school, and I am going to read you chapter 11, 12, and 13 today. So we will finish this story. Here we go. Chapter 11. No one suspects a zombie. Just then, some kid fish zombies staggered into the hall, and Pradeep was one of them. As they got closer, I could see he had a zombified Darren Schultz on his left side and the zombified Mackenzie twins on his right. There was no way I could take them all. If only I had a mirror. I ran to the door and headed to the boys' bathroom. The zombies followed me. I stood in front of the mirrors as the zombies got closer. Darren was the first one to stand still, stunned. Then the Mackenzie twins stopped too. Pradeep looked to his left and right. Oh, I see you reverse the effects of the zombie stare by forcing eye contact with the opposite mirror reflection. That's cool, Tom, Pradeep said. Is that what I'm doing? I said. Hey, wait, you're not a fish zombie after all. No, I was looking for you to warn you about Sanjay putting the virus on the internet when Darren and the twins followed me. I couldn't blow my cover or they would have taken me prisoner. We have to get up to the science lab, Pradeep, I said. They've got Frankie and Sammy. On the double, Pradeep said, already heading for the stairs. When we got to the science lab, I looked over at the countdown clock on Sanjay's laptop. 2 minutes, 43 seconds. There was only a short amount of time left to stop them. Pradeep winked at me outside the door, then put on his zombie stare. He grabbed me by the arms and pulled me into the room. Swishy little fishy, he droned. Moron, Mark yelled. Awesome, and you're too late. Ha! The fish is about to be toxic toast. And you get to see my computer virus released on the world in 2 minutes and 11 seconds, Sanjay said. Pradeep staggered nearer to Frankie, holding me tight like I was his prisoner. I pretended to struggle. Sammy looked over at us as she tried to squirm out of the trash can. She smiled at me, then stuck her tongue out at Pradeep, blowing a raspberry. Naughty, Pradeep, she said. Sanjay grinned at me. I think it's so fitting that my stupid little brother and your best friend is the one who turned you in. It's just so sad. I mean, he didn't even put up a fight or anything. Sanjay babbled on, and didn't seem to notice that Pradeep was zombie walking over to the laptop cord, which was hanging over the side of the table. Pradeep slowly reached out and yanked the cord, pulling the laptop out of Sanjay's reach and into his own hands. Stupid little moron, huh? Pradeep said, and started typing. Then how come I memorized your super long, unhackable password just by watching you type it? Now I can shut this thing down. Pradeep's fingers flew over the keyboard. Mark and Sanjay both raced to stop him. I grabbed Frankie's plastic jug and threw it at Mark. It clocked him right on the side of the head and knocked him off balance. He turned back to me. You just did my job for me, moron, getting rid of the fish. Now I'll get rid of you. That's the end of chapter 11. Chapter 12 is called Zombie Virus Countdown. Sanjay snatched the computer from Pradeep's hand and pushed him to the floor. You know, it is so unfair that no matter how much we outsmart our evil big brothers, they are still 2 feet taller and usually able to squash us if they wanted to. I watched Pradeep getting squashed and I knew my own squashing was just a matter of time. 45 seconds left. And still 5 numbers to enter on my passcode, Sanjay gloated. There's no way to stop me now. I'll have a whole world full of fish zombie slaves. You lose, I win. And you so lose, Mark said, as he caught up with me and grabbed me around my arms so I couldn't move. I looked Mark right in the eye. That's when I released my secret weapon. I opened my mouth and Frankie jumped out, slapping his tail hard across Mark's face until he fell backward into the mosquito net I'd been trapped under earlier. I quickly rolled the net around him as Frankie fell to the floor and skidded along its watery surface, skating towards Sanjay. Look out, Frankie, Pradeep yelled, as Sanjay stomped his feet trying to squash Frankie. But Frankie bounced off the top of Sanjay's boot, leapt over his head and landed on the laptop. 10 seconds, read the clock. Frankie flipped around on the keyboard, thwacking keys with his tail and dodging Sanjay's fists. The clock ticked on. 7, 6, 5, thwack, thwack, thwack on the keys. 4, 3, 2, tap, tap, tap. 1, and then it froze. Sanjay stared at the screen. "Impossible," he said. "How could a fish type in code?" Sanjay collapsed on the floor, talking to himself. "Yeah, you have to be a stupid little moron to be outwitted by a couple of little kids and a fish," I said. "Right, Frankie?" That's when I saw the goldfish. "Fishy not swishy?" Sammy struggled in the trash can, pointing to Frankie, lying motionless on the laptop keyboard. "No, Frankie, you can't," I said. "Quick, we need to get him in some water." Pradeep ran off to get the jug up from the floor and fill it from the tap. I gently placed Frankie in the water as Pradeep pulled Sammy out of the trash can. She hugged him around the knees. Sanjay was still mumbling to himself on the floor. How could he do that? How could the fish figure it out? Sammy toddled over to Sanjay and dumped the trash can on his head. "Naughty Sanjay," she said. The lunch ladies who Frankie had hypnotized burst into the science lab with Gladys right behind them. "I don't know what they're doing," she said. "Betty just put some eggs on a plate and Carol grabbed a moldy bread roll and they headed up here. We've stunned all the teachers and students now anyway, although nobody can reach Mr. Walker. Ethel and Mildred have him cornered behind the salad bar." "I think Frankie must have summoned them somehow," I interrupted, "and sent them a message with what he needs. Look." "Oh, he doesn't look good, does he? Poor fish, looks famished. No wonder he wanted eggs and bread. But why the moldy ones?" "Oh, because they're green," Pradeep and I said at the same time. And I realized I talk at the same time as a lot of people. Gotta work on that. I checked no one else was about to speak before I added, "He only likes green food." I took the eggs and moldy rolls and crumpled them into the jug. Frankie shook slightly. Then his mouth opened and closed. He started gobbling up egg bits and moldy bread. He looked up at me from his jug, winked, and swished his tail. "Good to have you back, Frankie," I said, patting him gently on his top fin. "We just need your help with one more thing," I added, before Pradeep and I whispered the next stage of our plan. And here is Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is called Fantastic Finale. And the finale means the end. So this is the final chapter. Here we go. We tied Sanjay in the mosquito netting too and let Frankie zombify him and Mark so they wouldn't try to escape. Then we went down to the basement and Frankie zombieized the bedlam-stunned zombies so that they were under his control. He made them all go to the assembly hall, including the lunch ladies and Mrs. Kumar. Pradeep and I wrote a message on the whiteboard that said, "Welcome to the Lunch Lady Appreciation Assembly." Frankie released everyone from his control, and they all blinked to life. The zombie stares had vanished. "It's like they've been rebooted," Pradeep said. On cue, Pradeep and Sammy and I started singing, "For they are jolly good lunch ladies, for they are jolly good lunch ladies, for they are jolly good lunch ladies, which nobody can deny." And everyone just kind of joined in. The lunch ladies looked surprised, and some of them even blushed. Gladys smiled bigger than ever. Mrs. Prentice looked confused to find herself standing at the microphone at the front of the assembly hall. She read the whiteboard and looked over at the beaming faces of the lunch ladies and said, yes, of course. The school couldn't function without the dedication of our much-valued catering staff. 3 cheers for the lunch ladies," I shouted. The whole hall replied, "Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray!" When the assembly was over, we told Mrs. Prentice that we had found the purple traitors, even though neither of them were wearing purple, of the false fire alarm and the computer prank, and that they were in the science lab. Pradeep and I ran ahead, and Pradeep wiped the virus off Sanjay's laptop just in time. Mark and Sanjay were still tied up when Mrs. Prentice and Mrs. Kumar walked in. "Stupid moron, letting a fish crack your code," Mark shouted. "No, you're stupid for not catching the fish in the first place," Sanjay shouted back. "You are so not evil enough to be in my gang," Mark said. "And you are far too intellectually inferior to be in my gang," Sanjay replied. Mark's face looked like his brain was trying to figure out what Sanjay just said. Then he gave up and thumped Sanjay and said instead, "Whatever," he grunted. Mrs. Prentice leaned over Sanjay and Mark. "I've spoken to the principal at the middle school, so you could add truancy to your list of other misdemeanors, like tampering with the fire alarm and hacking the school computer." Basically, Mrs. Prentice was telling them that they were busted. "I think you boys have a lot of explaining to do," she said. She led the boys toward her office, with Pradeep's mom tutting at Sanji. Then Mrs. Kumar stopped and turned around. "Samia," she called. Sammy skipped out of the science lab carrying Pradeep's lunchbox. "Oh, thank you, Samia. Here's your lunch, Pradeep." She paused for a second. "Oh, I nearly forgot the way you like it." She gave the lunchbox a shake before handing it to Pradeep. Pradeep gave me a look that said, "I bet you know why she did that, but I won't ask you now." And I knew exactly what his look meant. Sammy waved as she trotted off after her mom. "Bye, swishy, shaky, fishy," she giggled. Pradeep opened the lunchbox, and there was Frankie in the plastic bag that I had put him in after the lunch lady assembly. The goldfish's eyeballs were spinning around in their bulging sockets. "Poor Frankie," I said. "I don't think he's going to want to come to school with me again." "Hey, Frankie, let's go see the lunch ladies," Pradeep said. "Yeah, I bet they could find you something green to eat," I added. Frankie swished his tail, and it even looked like he gave us a fins up sign with his left fin. In the cafeteria, Gladys said she would keep our secret about Frankie safe. "He's the cutest little zombie fish, really," she said. I think Frankie blushed, but it was hard to tell through his fish scales. "Besides, it's the most exciting day at work I've ever had," she carried on. "And don't worry, next time you're in the food line, I'll give you an extra egg." She nudged my arm with her spatula and smiled. My stomach lurched at the thought, but Frankie thrashed around in excitement. I guess I could always take it home as a treat for him, 'cause from now on, Frankie's safer staying at home. I never realized how dangerous school can be. Luckily, we've got a big fat zombie goldfish to help out when things get rushed. I wonder how good he is at times tables. And that, boys and girls, is the end of my big fat zombie goldfish. Wow, so we had to rush a few of these chapters at the end, but only because I wanted to finish before the end of school. Now, before I talk about Monday, I want to point out that there is another book, My Big Fat Zombie Goldfish, the sequel. So if you like this story, maybe you can check at your library or at a bookstore, and maybe you can find this one, which is the second book in the series. If we had more time, I'd love to read it to you, but as it is, we only have one more day of school, Monday. So I've been asking you guys through the week to come up with some questions to ask me. Some of them have been really great. I'm going to read through them, pick a few that I want to answer, and on Monday, I'm going to answer them. So it's not too late to still leave me a question. You can do so on my Google Classroom page, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I showed you my email address earlier. You can always email me a question, and I will try to answer them on Monday. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Today was Friday, and I loved Fridays at school. I will miss you all. I will miss being at school, and hopefully we'll all be at school again in September. But in the meantime, I will see you guys Monday. Have a great weekend.